today's WOW webinar. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and I'm excited to talk to you about dark mode. We will email the webinar recording either today or tomorrow and posting it to our blog. So if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to post those questions in the chat box. I'll do my best to answer some of the questions at the end, but if I can't get to yours now, either myself or somebody from my team will follow up in an email to help answer it directly. So I will go ahead and get started. Just to do a quick introduction of myself, I am Chris Gruge. I'm the lead digital marketer here at WhereWare. For the past 5 years, I've specialized in behavior-based marketing automation, personalizing those customer journeys, and optimizing the overall user experience. Currently, I head up WhereWare's client marketing production team, where we're executing on all things email marketing automation, which includes the development of fully responsive emails and the triggering automation campaigns through the various ESPs that we're using to help our clients. I do want to note here, we have a special offer for a free 30-minute consultation with a digital expert for the first 3 people who email sales@whereaware.com and reference this webinar that you're on today. So please do take advantage. We look forward to hearing you and offering that special offer to you. And for those of you who don't know, WhereWare is an award-winning digital agency located in the Washington, D.C. metro region. For the past 20 years, we've specialized in a variety of digital services that revolve around smart growth through digital marketing strategy and activation. So how do we help our clients? We help our clients grow by creating multi-channel digital marketing strategies from digital strategy, marketing automation, website design and development, business analytics, and digital advertising to help them acquire, retain, and maximize every customer that they have on their end. So what are we going to talk about today? Today, we're going to go through an exciting topic, dark mode. I'm going to first kind of kick it off with what dark mode is and what it isn't, kind of give some definitions there. I'm going to go into some of the dark mode considerations and limitations that we know of as of today. I'm going to then shift over into how are we going to design dark mode, or how do we recommend designing for dark mode? And then with that design, jump into, well, how do we actually make it work? How do we take it into the build phase? And then lastly, just going to follow up with some of our favorite tips and tricks and workarounds that we've been able to find while we've jumped into dark mode here. So what is dark mode? Well, Litmus defines dark mode as the reversed color scheme utilizing light colored typography, UI elements, and iconography on dark backgrounds. So in other words, you're showing a darker style rather than a light style when the user has set their preferences to view your content in dark mode. So why has it gained so much popularity? Well, some of you can relate, but you might just like the look of it. That's your preference, and now that we have the ability to serve content in that way, that's how you want to view it. But aside from just personal preferences, it can also conserve the battery life of the device that you're looking at. It gives the user more control on how they view content to adjust brightness and contrast to improve legibility. And it reduces eye strain by using less of that blue light that's coming through the device there. And many applications are catching on. So as you can see, we have a couple examples here. Google search page has a dark mode version. Facebook has adopted the dark mode version and started kind of displaying that. But if you're looking at the Gmail example on the far right, while the Gmail app may show the dark style when dark mode is enabled, your marketing emails may still be showing the light version if it's not optimized for it. But we'll get more into some of those limitations a little bit later here in the presentation. So aside from personal preferences and the other benefits that we just saw, designing for dark mode allows low vision users to engage with the content a little bit better. And this quote from Nielsen Norman Group is actually pretty spot on. They say low vision users, specifically those with cataracts and similar afflictions, actually perform better with dark interfaces. And that's what we want. We want as many of our readers to engage with our content and not exclude anybody from being able to interact with it or engage with it. But if any of you have spent any time building an email, you know the many differences in how email clients can render your email, and there's really no exceptions for dark mode here. There's limitations that we need to consider as we're adopting this. And with the clients that do support it, we need to make sure that we're showing the best version of our content when dark mode is enabled. So firstly, dark mode doesn't mean a dark design. So some brands have a darker color palette or a darker brand by default, and that's totally fine. But just because you start off with a darker brand doesn't mean it's enabled for dark mode. And secondly, you don't have to rebuild a separate version of this email. It's actually much simpler than that. It's one email optimized for two environments that adapt to the user's preferences. And the key there is adapting to the user's preferences there. But like all things in email, there are certainly some downsides and some considerations. Firstly, this is still experimental because while some email clients are adopting it, they aren't all adopting it in the same way, which causes us to do things differently across some of the different clients. Some clients just don't render your dark mode the same. They don't render at all. They may render a version that they feel. So it does require some more testing because each email client is really kind of doing it a little bit differently. And we want to make sure that we're testing each individual case if we're adopting this type of trend. And when we're talking about adoption, there are varying levels of support which we've come to expect in the email world. The first one is flat out no support. Even if you have all the right pieces in place and you have designed and developed everything, it'll be removed or ignored from the email client, and they will serve up their version of your dark email of what they feel is best. The next one down, it's more of a partial color inversion where they only invert light background colors and dark text, but in general, they don't really touch any of the elements that are already darker in your base design. So what they're trying to do there is they're trying to result in a more fully dark design, but it's not 100% what we're looking for, and it's not what we developed for. And then lastly, there are some instances where an email client will fully invert the colors of your email regardless of what you have. So, so any darker colored background will actually be inverted to a lighter color background, resulting in a really poor dark design, which is the opposite of what we want them to do. And this one it actually tends to be the most invasive one since we have no control over it. So what email clients support dark mode and what kind of support can we expect? Well, this chart by Litmus is keeping us up to date as of July 2020, and it shows us that typically iOS devices and Apple Mail gives us full control and will render the dark mode design as we've created it. So they aren't really changing or manipulating anything that we put in there. They're relying on us to do that, which is great. But there are other clients like Outlook.com and the Outlook app that will partially invert those light colors to dark, but leave the already dark areas. So somewhat there, but not 100% quite there. And unfortunately, we do see Outlook 2019 on Windows and the Gmail app on iOS. It's fully inverting those colors. So it's really creating a poor dark design, and it's fully 100% opposite of what we're looking at. So what we know and what to expect with email clients, now that we have some of that information, how do we actually jump into adopting this trend and adding it to our own emails? Well, the design portion here is actually going to be pretty key. And for the design, you need to think strategically. You'll want to go through each module or each element and think about how you want it to render when a user's preferences are set to dark mode. So we want to go through each important piece, and there's a couple different ways that we can do that. So you'll want to think about all of your colors. Think about all your content, all the images, and how the content is displayed in your email. It's not enough just to change white to black and vice versa. Where it's supported, you'll want that email to still look and feel like your brand. So that's why we want to go through all these different pieces to make sure that it is still fitting with your brand. And we found that matching your brand's colors, your base colors, to an exact dark mode equivalent can actually be really helpful in the design and the build phase. This image does a great job for material design. It's showing the standard brand colors on the left, but on the right-hand side, it's telling us exactly what the dark mode color should be. So this purple variation actually should be showing as this purple variation on dark mode. And it's a quick and easy guide to put together. And it's really, really helpful for anybody really that's involved in either the design or the development phase, because it's very clear and cut and has those definitions for us. You'll also want to consider optimizing your images to ensure that they're rendering properly. Even if an email client fully supports your dark mode code, if your images aren't optimized, it can really affect the design. So on the right-hand side at the top, we're seeing icons exported as JPEGs with a little room for breathing around them. So we've got just a little bit of white space around. And if you have to export your icons as JPEGs, try adding a little bit of extra white space around that image so it doesn't look too cramped and confined in a small little box. But ideally, you'd want to export those icons as PNGs with a transparent background, like we see in the second image, but be careful because the color of the icon can't be changed in dark mode because it's embedded in the image. So you want to test to make sure that the color of the icon looks both good on both a lighter colored background and the darker colored background that you're choosing. But if the image doesn't look good on both light and dark colors, try optimizing it even a little bit further with a colored border or maybe even a drop shadow. So for the border and drop shadow, we recommend using the same color that you have as the light version of your background. So if you have a white background behind the logo, use a white border or a white drop shadow. So that way you're not seeing it on the light version. But when you switch it over to dark mode, that white border or drop shadow is actually going to come through, give a little bit of that separation from the logo and the background color. And then lastly, where it's supported, we can actually show a completely different image. So at the bottom right, we can see the Litmus logo. Instead of it being the colored logo there, it's a completely white logo. And so that's much more optimized. It gives us that much better contrast and visibility for that particular logo. And if you have a design team and they're able to create a separate design for dark mode, it really helps the developers when updating the code by utilizing this tool. So we found that Adobe XD does a fantastic job of allowing us to set a dark mode state for individual components within the design. So the designers will go ahead and design the template using the light version, and then they can modify the dark mode state of that. And it's as simple as switching back and forth between the dark mode state and the light version, the default state. And it's very clear cut and see what needs to be changed in the design or the development phase. And it leaves little room for questions for the developers at the end. And after the design phase, how do you update your code? Well, we've already done it from a strategic standpoint. We've worked with the design team or worked with the designers. And so we know what we want the email to look like. How do we transfer that into the build? Well, let's jump into it now. Over the next couple of slides, I'll be using a client example for this demonstration, the American Federation of Teachers, where we helped them with a number of things. During the email strategy audit, we identified they would benefit from a complete redesign of their emails and creating a master template, which they can use as their starting point for any email build. In this redesign, we identified an opportunity to optimize that template for dark mode. So the first step that we need to do is you need to take these two meta tags and add that to the head of the document in your code. They affect the whole template, and basically it communicates to the browser or the email client that we've set preferences for how to display this content, both for a light version and a dark version. And really it's just as easy as copying and pasting this into the head of the document, and you'll move on to step 2. Step 2, similar to step 1, but we need to add support to those meta tags by adding this string of code to a style tag in the head of the document as well. So simply is copying and pasting it. But this is really just reiterating what the meta tags have already told us before, but we're adding this second step just for a full range of support in case the meta tags aren't supported or they're stripped out from the code. And the first 2 steps were really It's copy and paste, and you really set it, and you don't need to adjust it or make any changes to it later. But now this step here, step number 3, is where all the magic is really going to happen. In this step, we're creating a media query that tells the browser or email clients the styles that we want the template to inherit when a user has dark mode enabled. In here, you're actually targeting individual areas that you want to change. So let's say you want to change your white background to a darker color. You add a class to the container that has the background color and specify the new color you want to use. You'll need to add the important declaration in your style to ensure that the background color gets inherited here instead of anything that may be inlined later on in the body of the code. And you'll follow this process and continue targeting elements and add the appropriate styles into this media query to really build out that full dark design. And now you can see on the right, switching back and forth between light mode and dark mode, it's complete. We've got all my classes, all my light background colors are dark, my dark text is now light, and we've made small enhancements throughout to different areas where it makes sense. Like, for example, the social care section, changing from blue to white to ensure that those logos are easy to see when they're converted over to a dark background color. And it's really that simple. But as we've gone through this, we've compiled a couple of tips and tricks and workarounds that we found to really help optimize the build phase. And I'll show you what those are right now. So the first one here is avoid using pure white and pure black in your design. So especially if you've got pure white on anything that's rendering in the dark mode version, pure white can be very jarring to the eye, especially if you're viewing it in a darker environment. So we recommend, and it ends up being a little bit cleaner design in our preference, by using lighter gray colors and darker gray colors instead of a pure white and a pure black. Second, group those elements together that share the same style changes. So for example, if you have multiple text sections that are all going to be changing from a darker color to a lighter color, try grouping those classes together in your media query so that you know all of those are going to be changed at once. Same thing for any sort of background color that's supposed to be changing. Try to group them together so that way you've got a much cleaner, condensed section of code. So that way, if you ever do need to make adjustments in the future, you know what classes are working together and which ones are all going to be looking the same. And then the last tip here is target email clients. Learn how to target email clients that actually do have some partial inversion. And right now we know that the Outlook app does allow us to target specifically using this data.ogsc tag in front of the class. And you can see it on the right-hand side in that screenshot. We actually have a combination of all the workarounds that we have here. We aren't using a pure white or pure black color. We have grouped classes together where it makes sense by separating them in the media query, and we're targeting the Outlook app specifically using the data-ogsc appended to the front of the class there. Super simple tips, but really helps with the development phase to make sure that you get broad support and that we are really having a clean setup there. And then lastly, I mentioned this before, but make sure that you're testing your emails because we don't want to have any surprises or anything unexpected come up with our design. So we can see here, we utilize Litmus to be able to test all of our emails, and Litmus makes it really easy so that we can see both the light and dark versions where it's supported. And in this screenshot here, we can see it for the iPhone devices, what it looks like on light mode, what it looks like on dark mode. But regardless of the testing tool that you're using, we still want to make sure that we're testing and making sure that we have a good, clean, consistent design across the various email clients there. And that's it. So really straightforward webinar here. Wanted to get in as a quick 20-minute webinar here. But if you need any help with any sort of digital marketing strategy or execution, let us know. So we have that special offer to get a free consultation with a digital expert. You can contact sales@whereware.com and reference today's webinar. But from here, I really just want to open it up to everybody that's attended. Do you have any questions for me? feel free to put them in the chat or questions box. I know we've already got some coming in, so I'm going to bring a couple of these up now, and I can answer them on the fly. All right, let me see. So this question here, this is actually a good question from Henry. What percentage of users are using dark mode? Well, that actually depends. So it's really highly dependent on your specific audience. Everybody's audience is going to be different, and the devices and email clients that they're viewing your content on is going to be slightly different. But I do know that there was I remember reading a recent poll from Android Authority where they showed dark mode preferences were as high as 82%, which is crazy. 82% of their audience was reading or engaging with their content on a dark mode enabled device. But like I said, it's really dependent on your audience. So how do you figure out what portion of your audience is looking at dark mode? As far as I know, as far as we know, there's not really an embedded or a native tool in any of the ESPs that use it, but I know Litmus does have their analytics portion. So if you have the analytics portion or utilizing that, add it the tracking code to your email, they will actually be able to see if the content was rendered on a dark mode enabled device. And we actually get some analytics into what device that was. So that will give you a better idea of how many people are engaging with dark mode. But I know this is a trend that's really kind of ramping up here. So while 82% may seem like really high for Android Authority, it actually might be consistent with what your audience is viewing your content on as well. So it's a great question. Let's see, next up, from Sarah, are you saying we need to design every single email in 2 formats? No, actually. So in one of the slides I explained, we're not having to design every single email in 2 formats. So remember, it's just one environment that's one email that's changing per environment. But if you utilize something like a master template, like in the American Federation Teachers example that I showed, they have a master template that they use for any new email moving forward. So they have like a base code that we've set up for them. And that base code already has all of the dark mode enable elements to it. So it has the meta tags, it has the style added, and we've targeted specific elements in the code to make sure that they render well on a dark mode enabled device. So using something like that, I want to say it's kind of more along the lines of set it and forget it, but that's not always true. We still want to make sure that we're testing and making sure that everything looks good. And we want to make sure that the dark mode code that we've included fits with the content for each individual email. So as long as you're utilizing something like that master template and having that base code starting out, then you don't need to develop it for each individual email. But if you don't have that kind of code library or that starting point from a master template, then that's where you start to get into, well, you end up having to include it on every single email, but you'll save time by creating that starting point, that base code and master template. Great question. This next one here from Raji, can you name the tool again? You said that helps make the dark and light design easier. Yes. So the tool I was explaining is Adobe XD. And what we're using it in-house for is our design team is able to design the email from top to bottom, header, footer, body, all that stuff. And they are able to use Adobe XD and then the tools that they have available to switch the state from light mode to dark mode per individual section that we've built. So we have that top kind of hero section with an image, text, and button. They're able to condense that into one individual section and then turn on a dark state where they can design the dark mode equivalent of that. And so from the development stage, once we get to building the email, we can flip between light mode and dark mode in that tool, and we can see what's changing, what the colors need to be, how it's supposed to look, and it makes it really easier from the design or from that development phase. This was actually a 2-part question from Raji. Can WhereWare help with templates? Absolutely, yes. So in that American Federation of Teachers example I showed, that's where we were doing the strategic audit to see what they were currently doing. And we gave them some recommendations on what they should continue doing, what we feel that they can do better, some new ideas. And in that was building out a master template so that they have that base code to start any new email build in the future. And that's where we enabled or built into the dark mode design, so that way they have it moving forward. This question, how would this work in MailChimp? I'm looking to offer some guidance to a designer who is working on templates and trying to figure out how to make the logo work. So I can actually broaden this out. Inside of MailChimp, and actually really any sort of email service provider, it's going to vary on what level that you can manipulate the code. So in some of the, in a lot of the ESPs that we're working on with our clients, we have full control of the code, and we can literally import a full HTML document that has all of our dark mode enabled styles. But if you're utilizing something like MailChimp and just have like the drag and drop interface that they have, there's not a whole bunch of flexibility in terms of adding that dark mode specific code. But there are some tips that we can try to enable so that when we do have those like full or partial color inversion email clients that are rendering their version of the dark mode, we can follow those tips like optimizing our images to make sure that they look good on a dark enabled background. So for example, your logo, it probably makes sense to use a logo that has a border or a slight drop shadow that matches like the light colored background you have on your light version, so that when it is converted to a dark mode enabled state, you still have that logo present. You may not have the full flexibility to swap that logo from a light to a lighter version, but we still have some of those kind of key things. And then same thing with any icons or any images. If you're able to export icons with a transparent as a transparent PNG, definitely do that, but be cautious to make sure that that icon color looks good both on the light and dark version. And if it doesn't, then you can export it with like a little bit of space, like a white box or something embedded in the image itself. So that way, regardless of the background color in the inside that container, that icon still shows through. All right, so I know we're just now at the 11:30 mark here. So just to be conscious of everybody's time, I'll go ahead and end the broadcast here. But again, just as a reminder, we do have that special offer to contact sales@wearware.com and reference today's webinar. To speak with a digital expert and get a consultation, and we will be sending out the recording of this presentation either today or tomorrow, and we'll be posting on our blog as well. So thank you all for joining. I really appreciate it. I hope you found this helpful, and absolutely reach out to Wearware if you need any help. All right, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.